we waited.
Yeah, no,
I got online. Whatever. I got online, and you guys were telling me.
and you're like,
You know, I'm recording right now.
So,
I'm recording right now.
oh shit.
Bro, it's go time. Let's do it.
All right.
I'm ready. I got some energy now.
We got the energy now.
Better
Yeah.
save that energy for skiing.
I'm gonna save it for your face. Let's go.
All right. Hello and welcome to another Agents of Helm. This shit. Fuck.
Take two.
Fix it in post.
We'll do it live.
Okay. Welcome to another episode of Agents of Helm, the show where every week we have one agent moderate a show of their own choosing, whether the others like it or not. I am Johanna. Tonight is my night, and I'm going to introduce everybody, including our special guest. We've got Lorenzo.
What up?
Joe.
What's up, people?
And Malik.
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
And I don't have to do a stupid greeting tonight, so I'm going to pass. And we've got our special guest, Anthony, who is an actor. He is our second guest, you guys, who has an IMDb page. Our first was M2 May Grant, and now we have Anthony Arbiza. And he has acted in several science fiction movies. He is going to share some of his experiences with casting and also insights on the wonderful, wonderful things we have planned. And he is also my brother. So please, let's all give a hand for
Woo!
Anthony.
Yeah.
So,
Totally undeserved.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe not. Maybe.
Hi.
Johannes really caught you up.
You really did. That was an exceptional intro. I don't think I've ever been introduced better than
We've
that.
been listening to it for the last 3 weeks. She really pushes. She toots your horn, and she does a great impression of you too. I don't know if you heard.
up!
I didn't even know I was impression of bull. What?
Well, her impressions all sound the same, so you can.
It's not exactly like her husband, which
exactly.
is kind of creepy. A little bit creepy, but
Because it's the same, like, deep man voice. That's why. And you've only heard
Yeah.
no, it's not just. It's also hey guys. It's not.
I had no idea I sounded like Rocky Bullwinkle. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's who it is.
That's pretty much all her impersonations, though, Anthony. They all sound the same.
Did you watch
Generic man.
Rocky and Bullwinkle when you were a kid, Johanna?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, every night.
I think we did. Yeah, whenever it was on, we stayed
You're
up
definitely
watching
influenced.
Warm milk and
Definitely
Rocky and
influenced you.
Bullwinkle. Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think you want to marry Bullwinkle.
You wanted to marry Bullwinkle, Lorenzo?
I think you want to marry Bullwinkle. That's why every guy's impression, every guy you do sounds like Bullwinkle.
I don't know why
like
you turned this into like this Freudian.
This is a really deep psychological analysis of my sister. This is great.
Anthony's just gonna lean back and watch you.
We should have a segment where we interview Anthony about you.
Joe and I were talking about that earlier today. And,
Yeah, and I even asked him before we came live, was there anything embarrassing that you could tell us about Johanna? You didn't spill anything. Then we got sidetracked.
I think that's what it was. I gotta rack my brain.
He's got plenty of stuff. He's got plenty of stuff. Once he thinks of the first one, the second one, the third one,
They're just gonna spill out.
It's gonna be an avalanche.
You know what? It's okay.
Stories.
Because
Yeah.
all of this is gonna be cut in post, so I'm okay with it. Actually.
If you let Lorenzo cut it, that might not happen.
Yeah, that's the thing. He'll cut like something really important so he can keep this intensely embarrassing stuff. Anyway, Anthony has some things he would like to
laugh, Johanna.
Yeah. Anthony has some things he'd like to plug. Anthony, I think you have a movie that had a Kickstarter, right?
Yep. We're doing a movie called it's called The Far Field. It's written by my very good friend John Kroberger, and it's directed by him as well, and cinematography by Chris Sturbank. Very good friends of mine from Penn State. They're in Brooklyn right now, and the movie's the movie's currently in post. We should be seeing it in festivals soon. You could definitely catch us on our website. It's thefarfieldmovie.com. We also have a Facebook page, Farfield, the Farfield movie. You can catch us on there. It's actually pretty cool. It's sort of a very early post-apocalyptic kind of event movie. Something happens.
Is it like two words, Farfield?
Yeah, it's the Farfield. Yeah, it's 2 words. Yep.
3.
Or I guess that's technically. Do you count the? Or is that, I don't know the
word
rules.
count, when you do a word count, I think you probably do.
In
article,
Microsoft Word.
You can totally do without it.
Lorenzo, you're coming in a little low.
Oh, is this better?
I think so, yeah.
Sorry, my computer's all kind of jacked up. Yeah, I'm sorry. So it's like a early apocalyptic, like the apocalypse has just started to happen, and these people
sort of, yeah. So essentially the movie starts with a character, not myself, but a character played by Chris Sturbank, the cinematographer, where he's in the woods and he sort of escaped an event that occurred in the major cities. It's sort of what's happening right now with the Xbox Live and PlayStation Network and even Sony being hacked. A lot of different DDoS attacks and stuff. It's similar to that, except the hackers attacked major government centers, and so a lot of stuff breaks down. The electrical grids and internet and all major functions just completely collapse. And he escapes into the woods, and then I play a computer engineer who's trying to restore some of the cell towers in the area, and he finds me collapsed. I won't get more into the movie, but that's pretty much the gist.
Do you have a clip?
I don't have a clip. We're just in post right now, so we'll should be done editing pretty soon, within the coming weeks. So I could send you guys a clip as soon as that stuff's all put together, for sure. We definitely have photos up on our Facebook page, though, production stills.
Well, you kind of did a clip. Your description was sort of like a clip.
That's true.
You know, and you left us hanging at the end and everything. So it was a very good description.
I love cliffhangers, and I love coloring my descriptions with as much candor as I can.
No, that sounds really cool.
What festivals are going to be in?
Whichever one accepts us.
Okay.
Do you go like, how many have you applied for, or have you done it yet?
None yet. The movie's still being completed. It should be within the coming weeks. I think probably by February we should be completely done, and then it will be stamped on a vinyl, I think is what we're doing now, because that's all what the hipsters do. And then that'll be sent out into the world and see what we can get.
So as far as length, Johanna actually sent us a link of a 3-part I don't know, science fiction. I guess it was a miniseries, Johanna. That's what it was that
It was a short
starring in. Is this along the same lines, or is it more of a feature length?
It technically would be considered a short film. I think it'll total about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. We're trying to do, maybe we can try to do like a series or something if this one kind of kicks off, because it's a really, really interesting concept and a really kind of well-realized world, I think. So we're interested in writing more scripts for it, that's for sure. But we'll see where this one.
Where did you guys shoot it?
We actually shot it at my wife's, where she grew up. It's up in Northeast PA. The place is actually called World's End State Park, which is kind of appropriate. And we shot it kind of all the way around there. We shot it in a couple of mountains, some forest scenes, and a cabin. We actually have a cell tower that's real that we actually kind of snuck into.
Did you climb on it?
I did not climb on it. No, we weren't that brave about it. We don't have an insurance policy, so we kind of didn't want to do that.
How many did you use, like what you would call like a guerrilla type shoot type scenario?
Yeah,
Like,
we had
percentage-wise, like 5%, 20%, 2%.
pretty much all of it. Yeah, we had we had professional sound equipment. We had professional, pretty cool camera. We had a tripod set up and some lighting, but we tried to use as much natural lighting as we could. Just the feel of the movie is a lot more gritty for sure. So we didn't use any crazy professional stuff. We wanted to keep the look to be as sort of handheld and as stripped down as possible.
Was it expensive?
No, I think actually our budget totaled about $8,000 or $9,000, and that includes everything pretty much. That includes food and travel and equipment and post-production and any licenses we needed to obtain and stuff like that. So it's actually a pretty modest budget.
Oh, nice. So, how long did it take to do it all?
Probably totaled about 15 days. Shooting only took about 3 or 4, or at least the most of the main shots were. But there was a lot of extra establishing shots, and we needed to get a couple of extra sound stuff. So total about 15 days.
All right, great. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more. Once you get a clip, I'm sure we'd be happy to have it on the website, and we'll be sure to put the information
Pictures are ready.
Yeah,
we can put the pictures on the website.
Absolutely. So send on the pictures.
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely do that.
And we'll put the links up on Facebook. So today, very apropos that we have Anthony on, we are going to talk about people of color in science fiction media, whether it is movies or books or music or anything else. So what we're going to do is first we're going to talk about invisibility of people of color in science fiction, why there seem to be fewer minorities in mainstream science fiction, and whether science fiction has been a better channel for people of color to be involved in, and for people, characters who are people of color, to be in stories, especially in independent media. And then we're going to go into a discussion about visibility, what people of color do once they are able to come out either in the mainstream or able to express themselves to a wider audience, and we did a little homework for that, and we'll talk about the future of POC visibility and what obligation POC writers and other artists have, podcasters even, have to maintaining a social justice message. So I think the first thing, though, that we're going to talk about is POC invisibility. Where are the minority characters? Where are the minority actors in Hollywood? We've talked about this before in terms of other genres, but science fiction in general, I'd love to hear from you guys. So let's start with our guest, Anthony.
There's not enough. That's for sure. I think you'll find a lot more of them in the kind of films that I'm more acquainted with, at least the smaller, more independent films for sure. Especially foreign films, absolutely. I think I see way more, even in the science fiction, even some of this stuff. I know the Deployment Strategy was a movie I was in before, and it was a lot of Asian American actors that we had. But there's not enough, that's for sure. And it's really kind of surprising that there aren't as many. At least in mainstream, for sure. I think the same kind of archetypes that live in the sort of mainstream Hollywood movies, romantic comedies, and whatever, kind of live in the same kind of things are found in science fiction. I think, at least in mainstream movies.
And you've had experience in terms of casting. I know we talked a little bit about that. What has been your experience as a person of color when it comes to being cast in science fiction films or in general?
It's actually really hard. A lot of the characters that at least I found myself either auditioning for or trying to get callbacks for or anything tended to be minor characters or supporting characters or others, and it's interesting how you see people. I mean, at least for me, because I'll always look for just generic characters, or I won't really try to discriminate against like a description of a character and think, okay, this character's white or this character's black or Hispanic or whatever. I just think, okay, this is an interesting character, I'm going to go for it. And it isn't until I get into the actual audition that they're like, well, you could probably do this a little bit better or that, and it's always not always, but generally tends to be like the angry guy or it's definitely a supporting character, not someone that's in the main character or in the spotlight, at least in that movie, which is at least in the bigger stuff. Like I mentioned, the deployment strategy in the movie I just did right now, it wasn't even really discussed about color or ethnicity or anything. It was just what character fit, and I think that's why I appreciate these smaller movies so much more. And I find so much more freedom in this kind of stuff because it's either completely just colorless, or they're cognizant of it, and they want more diversity, especially in movies that depict the future or far future or even near future, where you see a lot more characters or a lot more people should be of varying different colors, and I think those kinds of filmmakers are more apt to include those kind of people.
So beyond just some of the things that you mentioned, which is directors being cognizant or else having more of a race-blind casting strategy, is there anything else that directors or anybody else should be doing or could be doing better in order to get more characters of color into their, or even actors of color into their movies?
I don't know if there's anything they should be doing. I mean, it really depends on the story. Like, I'm definitely not anywhere near like big budget movies or anything like that at all. I very few times have I seen an issue with racial casting or anything. It's a couple of times that I did look for something that was bigger. I found that, but I think the stories being told, I think the stories that people want to tell, at least the younger people, and I've worked a lot more with younger writers and younger directors for sure. They seem to want to tell just a completely colorless story, or they want to tell just an interesting story, and they're really not concerned about ethnicity. So I think it's important that we continue to be aware of the casting of these of people, or we being aware of who we're casting in there, and not making sure that we like maintain a balance, because I think that can be kind of inorganic or forced. But I think encouraging directors and I think encouraging writers to write what they think is correct, with whatever they feel comes to them and they want to write on this page. I think it's important that we see more writers that try to push more of the science fiction out and to write more interesting stuff that includes anybody. That it doesn't matter if you're a woman or whatever color you want, or gay or straight, doesn't matter. Like it's about the person, it's about their experience and whatever that is.
Great, yeah, and I also seem to observe that independent movies and independent movies tend to be doing better with this. I know you guys are tired of hearing of this, but the Europa Report is by far one of the best movies I saw last year, and it was a small budget film, and it was a very diverse cast, and that's what I've definitely observed in independent sci-fi movies. Lorenzo, what do you think about visibility of POCs, whether it's in movies or in any other media?
Well, first of all, I'm not with the whole POC thing. You know, the term people of
Lorenzo, you're breaking up.
color is, but word. Hello?
Lorenzo,
Can you
you're
hear me?
breaking up.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
How about now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Awesome.
Okay. Well, what I was saying was that see, it's or vagina.
What?
POC.
Cyber
It's just, but
vagina? Is that what you just said?
but pronounced like POC. Like Nancy
He's breaking up again.
Yeah.
for vagina.
Oh my god.
Like
All I caught was vagina. That's all I caught.
That's
And
the clearest word that ever comes out any time he talks.
I'm so intrigued already. I don't
POC.
even.
Yeah, the second that word came out, I was kind of like, all right, perked up.
Malik like unmutes. He's like, hold up.
I make sure to mute myself when I'm not speaking so you guys don't catch the background noise, but I had to speak up for that one.
POC, like if a POC, you know, like maybe if you're a Southern, POC. Or maybe it's like French, it's like a French accent. POC. Kind of sounds a little bit like, you know, another word. So,
Okay, so people of color.
yeah, what was the original question?
It's about minorities, if you want to put it that way, in science fiction, whether it's in movies or books, or there's a lack of visibility. Even 40 years after Octavia Butler started writing books, and it's still kind of going on. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I agree. Like since Star Trek, science fiction has always been like it's just seemed like it's more diverse than anywhere else. Because I really think science fiction writers, like there's just something about being a science fiction writer where you just love like all the different people that that could be in a story. The opportunity for because I think to these guys it was just so obvious all the social injustice that was going on in the world, and it was like a really clear way for them to express it. That the subversiveness of it, and yeah, I mean, and that's kind of been a tradition in sci-fi for a long time, I think. So I agree that it is it's a good place for that kind of stuff to happen. And I think the overarching point is that it should be happening, all across the board. But I definitely understand your point about how a lot of filmmakers are just concerned about making the movie. But I definitely think you can taking diversity into it, and I guess ultimately it comes down to who's making the movies, right? I mean, if you're a person of color and you are the one making the movie, then that gives you a tremendous voice. And who are the minorities that are producers? Because those are the people that are really going to have the opportunity to change things.
And I mean, in the article that we read about Chris Rock, was it in that article? It was in one of the most recent interviews where Chris Rock is like, he talks about California and he's like, this is a slave state because there are all these Central Americans who are doing their housekeeping or, they're doing lawns, and you don't see any Central American producers. And you still don't see a lot of people of color who are producers. And I think, Lorenzo, you're coming up with a great point that it's not just about people of color who are actors and people of color who are characters of color. We're talking about the higher echelons too. We're talking about directors. I know that Anthony, the director he worked with on Deployment Strategy, is Asian American. So I mean, obviously that makes a big difference when it comes to casting. I think it's also about diversity in the higher echelons as opposed to just actors, and about writing characters. Malik, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that to Anthony's point earlier about making the creation of colorless characters and being able to utilize the sci-fi genre to do that. The really great thing about sci-fi just in general is that as a genre, it's completely devoid of any historical context. So you don't need to tell a story that fits a certain diagraphic or a certain demographic or a certain race group or anything along those lines. You can tell whatever kind of story that you want, and so it allows you to kind of play with different beings of different shapes and sizes and colors and things of that sort. And so when you go out and you cast for these roles, or even when you just create these characters, the opportunity exists for all directors and all writers and all producers of sci-fi films to really make a film that is very diverse. So the fact that they're making the conscious choice either not to make diverse characters or not to write colorless characters, and then also to not cast them, because obviously we've seen works where the casting were just really popular, like The Hunger Games, for instance. The Hunger Games was written, and the characters of Rue and Thresh were supposed to be were clearly described as being brown characters, or characters of color. And when those characters actually showed up on the movie screen, we heard the reaction from fans and from people that had read the books and thinking that wasn't what it was supposed to be. Well, it's actually whatever the writer wanted it to be, right? And so the opportunity there to make characters of color be prevalent in sci-fi films, because you don't really have anything to kind of tie yourself to. And I looked up. It was interesting when you started talking about the invisibility of black characters or characters of color in sci-fi fantasy films. I decided to look it up just because I hadn't thought about that subject, and I decided to look it up and see if I could find some statistics behind it. And I actually found a couple of really interesting articles. I found an article from NorthwestAsianWeekly.com. Which is an article by a gentleman by the name of Jason Cruz. He wrote an article in August of 2014 entitled "What Are You Missing in Sci-Fi Films?" And in bold letters he said diversity. And an interesting take on it was that he indicated that in the top 100 grossing films as of 2014 through 2014, only 8% of those top grossing films starred a protagonist of color. Of the 8 protagonists of color, all are men, and 6 are played by Will Smith. And one is
That's what I'm talking about.
Right, and one is a cartoon character, is considered a cartoon character, is Aladdin, right? 0% of the protagonists are women of color. 14% of the protagonists are actually women, but not of color, and I believe it was only 1% of the movies had a villain of color. So those are staggering numbers when you consider how many sci-fi films are made over the course of a year, and this is the top 100 grossing films through 2014. I mean, obviously, we are really missing the mark, or Hollywood is really missing the mark, and I guess I would throw a question back to you guys, and Anthony, to you as well. Specifically, what do we think is the driving force behind why not look to create movies with protagonists of color, create sci-fi films with protagonists of color? Is it because Hollywood or because the fan base doesn't project that they will come out to see that film, and therefore it's about making that money and the front end, and so you cast Channing Tatum to be your lead male in this new film that's coming out this year, Jupiter Ascending, instead of some other, man of color.
Yeah,
so what's the driving force behind that? What's the thinking behind that?
It's really upsetting. Like, and when you actually write out or spell out the numbers like that, just because I was gonna mention while you were talking about the different movies that Hunger Games and stuff. Like, just recently they had what was a Ghost in the Shell, I think, that they announced that Scarlett Johansson was going to play the lead character, which in the anime she's supposed to be Asian. And the same thing with Akira.
Isn't she?
But I think even in the anime she was supposed to be, at least the way they drew her and the way the original concept was.
Yeah, and it takes
anime.
place in
They all
Japan also.
Yeah. And the same thing with Akira, I know, or Akira, I don't know. The same thing. They want to cast all white characters in a predominantly
No, that is
Japanese.
horrible. That's stupid. Akira, I mean, Scarlett Johansson's one thing, okay? But Akira should be, yeah, definitely Japanese, because that is
Yeah,
just such a Japanese story.
right. And to answer Malik's question, I think I'm not 100% sure why they're so afraid, but I think it's just this, I think it's really a matter of what you said at the end there, the money, and I think it's the status quo. It's I think these producers and these casting directors are just afraid to cast a non-white character because they think that either their film is going to be plastered as, oh, okay, this is a racially diverse movie about diversity, instead of it just being about, no, this is just a really good movie. It doesn't
Right.
matter that the character itself is maybe ethnic in some way. It's just a really good movie. Stop looking at the character as an ethnicity and look at them as who they are. I think it's a matter of the status quo, and I think it's changing. I think it's very slowly changing. But I think what, like Joanna was saying, I think it's gonna take producers. It's gonna take people to make the changes themselves to start making more movies with more ethnically diverse characters, and not completely defile those remakes like Akira and stuff, and whitewash them.
I
And
think the
that's
real question, though, is like so to get to that point, like the real question is like what's the ratio of like films or actors, people of color that are given the same like number of chances or less chances? Like what's the failure rate on both sides? Because is it that they're not making these movies,
Well,
or is it that we're not watching them? Because
to,
it's
to your
it's like some racist shit on both sides.
to your point, Lorenzo, I mean that's another reason why. And Joe, I know we got to get to Joe's point, answers to these questions. But I think one of the reasons what I was so disappointed in the movie After Earth, not just because of the fact that it was, I mean, it was
It was bad.
it was clearly nepotism.
It was just
It was just
terrible.
It was
bad.
terrible. It was clearly nepotism on the part of Will Smith and putting his son in the film and things of that sort. But I thought that when I first heard about the story and I first read the plot line, I said, wow, this is an opportunity for a man of color to lead a sci-fi the potential for a sci-fi franchise. This was the story that they were telling was a very, I mean, say what you will, but the story they were telling, it was it was a world, right? They were telling a story about a completely new world. And if it had been done correctly, and if it had been done well, there was a possibility to branch that out. And I think that it really starts with just that one, film or that one franchise that really kicks off a genre. I mean, the sci-fi genre itself was kicked off by, and not wouldn't necessarily say kicked off, but it was thrust into the forefront of our psyche, by one really big franchise in the 70s, just kind of blowing things up and just kind of being like, hey, this is something you got to pay attention to, and it really has legs. And so I was really hoping for, even though I didn't expect it, I was really hoping that a movie like After Earth, starring a character of color, would be able to be that launching piece. And it's another reason why I was a little bit disappointed when I heard that The Matrix, when I first heard that Will Smith had passed on The Matrix, because The Matrix became such a huge sci-fi experience for so many people. Had it been a man of color leading the show, leading the way, and it actually was a man of color leading the way on the side of Lawrence Fishburne, but he was not given obviously the same cachet as the character of Neo, played by Keanu Reeves. So it's just there's these opportunities, like you said, Lorenzo. What the opportunities out there, and whenever you get the ball, you need to score, right? So, and it just seems like we're not doing that, and maybe it's just because we just haven't found the right story that fits us, or we haven't found the right medium to really get into. But it's disheartening, to say the least.
Yeah, I think it just boils down that I don't think a, a, a an actor of color in a sci-fi film. Not that I don't think. I think Hollywood doesn't think that an actor of color in a sci-fi film is going to put butts in seats. I just don't. And I think we talked about this a few months ago. I just don't think.
Are they right?
We don't know because they haven't tested it yet, right? And I mean, I think the conventional thinking is, go with what you know, go with what's worked in the past, and make some money. So as you guys were talking, I was trying to think of like a woman of color that's led a sci-fi film, and the only one I could think of was Sanaa Lathan in Aliens vs. Predator, right? That was like the only one I could think of.
Wasn't Angela Bassett in a sci-fi film where she was either the co-lead or she was, I don't know if she was.
That was with Ralph Fiennes, I believe. It was
It's really bad, but I just.
Yeah. I know what movie you're talking about. It was like '99, around there. Yes, I remember. I can't remember the name. I think Ralph Fiennes was in it with her as well. Yeah, she was in that. That was a sci-fi film. But yeah, I thought it was.
You know what, Joe?
Yeah.
You know what my favorite post-apocalyptic film is? I think of all time. I was giving this some thought, and you don't know. You couldn't possibly guess. It's Beast of the Southern Wild. Like that right there is totally a post-apocalyptic world. This is like post-Katrina. And these people are like living in the crazy wilderness. I don't know if you guys did. Everybody see that movie?
It's with Convention A. Wallace, right? Annie.
I've heard you talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
it was really good.
So that gets to the point, though. I guess is what I'm saying is that that is a spectacular movie, and nobody saw it.
She got nominated.
Yeah,
They got nominated. Yeah.
She got nominated for an Oscar.
I'm not saying she didn't. I'm saying nobody saw it, though. Like, nobody went out to see it.
I see what you mean. I see when we think, I mean, even right now, right, when we're thinking of people of color in science fiction, we're thinking like Will Smith in After Earth or Rue in Hunger Games, who wasn't even really a main character. We're not thinking Quvenzhané Wallace, although I didn't know that the movie was post-apocalyptic.
Well, he's saying it's post because it was after Katrina.
It was after Katrina.
Yeah, it
had like a fantastical science fiction-y like
It is.
feel to it.
It's like pretty fantastical.
Why haven't I watched this?
It's really good. You really should watch
No,
it. It was actually a very good movie. That was my pick for Best Picture that year, though. I really like that movie.
Now, see, the thing about it though is that did it get as much? It definitely did not get as much promotion as another movie did. I could imagine them having a different actress, a white star actress, play that role, and then really like push it.
Would have made money with Dakota Fanning.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You're telling the truth.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So
See, but
that's the audience, though, isn't it?
And I think I don't know who
the producers. Like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, where does the racism?
That's a little bit of both, man. You got to get the marketing out there.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I think there's these like modulated like pieces of Hollywood that it's not just the writer, it's also the marketing team, it's also the audience that's going to go see it, it's also the theaters that are going to put it in there, it's also the TV channels that are going to air the advertisements. It's so many different people that are just so afraid to stray from like the normal path that they just don't. Everybody's kind of responsible a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I just think that it's just a matter of time, though, ultimately, because our like white is meaning less and less. Like as we go through the course of being America. At least that's what I see in like New York. There's a lot of like white, black, Latino, white, Latino, black mixes going on. Like not even, I'm like, but Asian.
Yeah,
and
at the
like,
same time, though, like the rest of the country is not New York. Like when I go out outside of New York, I'm just like
stuff being made in New York. Like it really just matters is when we're talking about media, right? It really just matters if LA, and I think it is.
I don't know if LA is the same as New York in terms of. I mean, there's still a certain amount of hierarchy in New York. like Central Americans to a very large extent are not treated the same way as other Latinos from other
No,
nationalities.
I definitely agree. I'm just saying that as time goes by, those those lines are just they keep getting more and more mixed. I see it so much now compared to how it was before, and I just think that love is going to conquer racism because it's going to end up really meaning nothing as long as like things keep going the way they are. Like we're going to be like a whole new sort of like brown species, I think.
Did anybody
But
see the South Park episode, The Goobacks?
Yes, I did. I love South Park, so.
Well, if I explain the in the episode, there are people from the future that can't find jobs, so they use a time machine to come back to the past, and
oh
like the people that come back are like this like sort of just this brown color, and they have no race anymore because at that point just everybody has intermingled, but they're still coming back to look for jobs, and it's very funny.
Yeah, it's a very good episode.
because they're making like millions and millions just by being there, right? It's a weird time.
Yeah, right. Because they put stuff in like banks, and then they let the interest like rack up for their family in the future.
That's right. That was the bend where it was like kind of like it was like the southern border, right? Sort of.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah.
was that's funny. Yeah, and see, you can totally do that whenever you're willing to like get aliens involved in a story. Then you can do these. They're so obvious the what sci-fi writers were doing in the past when they were actually making social commentary. Like I'm gonna say it again, Star Trek. But anyway, I lost my train of thought.
I
Just go
mean,
on.
the thing though that I feel like that's really important, and I think that science fiction writers were trying to, really talk about and think about social issues, but frankly, they were all white, and they were all white back then. And when we've got people of color in books like The Hunger Games, they're still being written by white people. So there's also a publishing issue too. I mean, Octavia Butler back in I think it was like the 80s, did some sort of book signing or something like that, and someone told her that her books were not believable because there were black people in space. And she's like, I have these freaking, and we've all read the story, which we're going to discuss later, and the one thing the guy said was like, it's not believable that there are black people in space. And that is, I don't feel like that's something that's been fixed. Or that's not something that, I mean, I can think of all sorts of dystopic writers who've recently come out who are, in mainstream bookstores, and they're all white.
Mm-hmm.
They're all white. Maybe somebody got it Latino. I mean, like Junot Diaz is talking about writing the first science fiction book written by a Latino that'll break through, because there just haven't been any. So I mean, beyond also exposure of actors and directors and producers in cinema, there's a serious problem with writers of color writing science fiction.
Well, see, and that's the other question, I guess, and that's to Anthony's point about money being the driving factor. I mean, if you're a black writer or you're a writer of color, for instance, it's much easier to write y tu mamá está bien and then and make money because Hollywood's gonna pick that up. Or you can write the Best Man Holiday, or you can write the next Best Man movie, and just grab a whole bunch of black actors and put them in it, pay them not as much as you have to pay the white actors, and Black America is gonna go for it. That the studios are gonna pick it up and they're gonna make it that one African American film for the holiday season, and it's gonna hit. So you may love the science fiction genre, and you may have screenplays or drafts of science fiction books written, completely ready to go, and look around and think to yourself, hey, if I'm going to make a movie, or if I'm going to submit something, I want to submit something that's going to get picked up. I want to submit something that's going to really get some momentum behind it and get driven all the way to the top. I'm probably going to shelf that because it's likely not going to get the same amount of appreciation and the same amount of effect than this other book that I wrote about black love, or this other book that I wrote about what it's like to be a Latino girl in Mexico or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's just really really difficult for a writer. I mean, I would believe it's probably really difficult for a writer to step out in there, because you just realize the corporate machine is definitely not behind you.
Yeah, I think science fiction writing has always traditionally been white, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you try to step out, and if person of color tries to step out and do something different, they're just not going to be, chances are just not going to be accepted, right? I mean, you're just going to be like, oh, you can't do that. You're black. You're Hispanic. You can't write this. Just the thought that just goes into, like, you just can't do it because you're this, and it just won't be accepted. I mean, you have like Guillermo del Toro directing Pacific Rim and directing all these fantasy movies and stuff like that, but they're like the real mainstream ones never really have any black or Latinos in them, right?
I do think it's breaking through a little bit. I mean, because you mentioned Guillermo del Toro and also Alfonso Cuarón with Gravity.
Yeah, he did Gravity, but George Clooney and Sandra Bullock were in that.
Oh, I know, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's very slowly starting to permeate Hollywood, but we're gonna see more and more of it every year. But yeah, no, absolutely right now.
I agree with you, Anthony. But like, look at Zoe Saldana. Look at Zoe Saldana. She's been in two of the biggest science fiction movies in the past last 10 years. She's been in Avatar, and she's been in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's been blue and she's been green, right?
Yeah.
Laz Alonso was in Avatar. He was blue also. I mean, it's just it's crazy. I mean, like, unless you're Will Smith or like even Vin Diesel. I mean, he gets to be himself. He just puts goggles on when he's Riddick, right? Groot. Yeah, I mean, he was Groot, but he was also Riddick, and he's the lead. He's the lead in the Riddick films, and he just has to wear those stupid goggles, right? But you got The Rock, who's been in Hercules, and I guess there's been some other stuff. Huh?
You're gonna have John Boyega in episode 7.
Yeah, you'll have him as one of the. I don't know if he's playing a Jedi or what, but yeah.
I think he's a stormtrooper.
Like stormtrooper. And then you have one-offs, like you have, like, you remember Gina Torres in Firefly. She was a secondary character. And Anthony Mackie is the Falcon and Captain America. Don Cheadle is the Iron Patriot. And it goes on. They're always secondary characters. So, I don't know when that time is going to be to have a lead person of color in a science fiction film. And it's not. I don't think it's going to be in the Star Wars movie. I mean, I hope so. But
that would be so fucking
how many black people or people of color in the new Star Trek films? Yeah, I can't think of any.
Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Jay Choi.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, okay.
John Choi.
John Choi. Yep.
Yeah, it's bad on my part, because when I think of people of color, I usually don't think of Asian Americans or Asians at all, because I always think that they're treated more on the other side of it.
Yeah, I can.
You know what I mean?
But they still count.
Let's just say more acceptable. Let's put it that way.
Male Asian actors have a hard time. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think male Asian actors have a really hard time breaking into.
No, no, I'm not talking about as far as acting wise. I'm just talking in general.
I see. Right. In terms of being quote unquote disadvantaged.
Yeah.
In your eyes. Yeah. Yeah. So, any final thoughts on Invisibility?
No, I think we covered the majority of it.
No, we did. Good job, you guys.
We covered Invisibility.
The invisibility is even more invisible now.
We made it visible.
Social change happening right now.
Yeah. We'll put a blanket over the invisibility. Now you can find them.
No, we uncovered
the
invisibility.
Is it the invisibility cloak only operates in... Well, okay, he can take it off. Okay, Harry Potter. Okay.
Okay, well, Johanna's the owner of an invisibility cloak as well. That's how she won the game show. But anyway.
Well, one thing I gotta point out is that there's definitely a place in all those movies for like a certain kind of black character, like Mobius. You know, like that's the
Morpheus.
yeah.
Not Mobius strip.
Morpheus.
Who's Mobius?
Mobius is a Mobius strip.
I know what Mobius.
Well, then there you
It's
go.
also a comic book character, right?
Yeah, it's a comic book character.
Vampire.
Oh,
The
okay.
vampire.
Mobius. Anyway, so you got those guys like, who plays God in the Jim Carrey movies? Why would
Morgan
I?
Freeman.
How could I possibly forget his name? But
Morgan
Morgan
Freeman?
Freeman plays one of those characters all the time. Like that's definitely like there's always room for like a Morgan Freeman in all those movies that you guys were talking about.
Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson is the Avengers, Morpheus.
He's shouty.
Yeah. How many people of color in the Lord of the Rings or any of the Hobbit
boy.
films?
I bet you like Sargon was
That's true.
probably a color.
That's actually something Juno Diaz said. Juno Diaz said, like, motherfuckers will read a whole book in Elvish, but they freak the fuck out when there's like 2 lines of Spanish in a book.
Yeah.
It's not telling lies. So speaking of what people of color do once they're visible, we're going to turn it over to visibility, and we're going to talk about the first part of this, which is what people of color do once they're visible and how they tell their stories. So for this particular part of the show, I had everyone do some homework, cue the groans. We read the story Blood Child by Octavia Butler, who is single-handedly the most amazing writer of color on earth. And the documentary Last Angel of History. So I think we'll do a little whip around and see, we'll get just general thoughts, and then we can maybe just do like a roundtable discussion on themes of the pieces. So I'm going to start with Joe.
Oh, you want to start with me?
Yes.
Okay. On which, you want to start with the documentary or?
Oh, let's do a general since they seem thematically connected.
Okay, so we can start with the mothership, the mothership connection. So the name of the documentary was The Last Angel, correct?
Last Angel of History.
Last Angel of History. So yeah, it was a little different than what I thought it was going to be. It had to do a lot more with music than I thought it would have. A lot of P-Funk, George Clinton, a lot of Sun Ra. Techno somehow is involved, and a data thief from 200 years in the future coming back and looking through our history and trying to find the mothership connection, the first clue that he's given coming back. Like I said, it wasn't what I expected. I did find it somewhat interesting. A lot of English people in this documentary. I was a little thrown by that. I was like, okay, the English rapper, I forgot his name.
I don't know their names.
Well, there's a lot of English in Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
And Octavia Butler was in it for like 20 seconds.
She was.
Yeah, she was.
And I liked the way they associated, like, equating alien abduction to slavery, and how people deal with aliens is similar to the way the people of color would be living here in the United States are dealt the same way as people would deal with aliens that invade them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it was kind of weird, and what was that? I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah, that the Black American experience is not too far away from what people who, if aliens landed in your neighborhood, you would feel the same way about those aliens, as you do about Black Americans. The way the doctor stated it. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, I did find it interesting. And then as far as the,
I think we should just stick to this and then do this.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I just made up my mind.
Okay.
All right, so Malik.
Yeah, actually, I found that the connection with the with like aliens and the slavery connection, extremely interesting. As a matter of fact, there is a sci-fi movie that it automatically reminded me of. Have you guys ever seen District 9?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
so District 9, I thought that was a remarkable film. I love that movie. I've seen it a bunch of times, but it's a film where it's very similar, where the aliens come to the land, come to here, and automatically we isolate them, we segregate them from society, we pretty much use their technology, and we don't give them shit, right? We give them nothing, and we treated them horribly. And so it was a very similar when I heard that, that was the first thing I kind of thought of, where the aliens and slavery, and how that connection is made. I thought that in the documentary itself, the discussion of basically, music, and we've discussed this on the music show before, where music being the expression of our voice, and that this was just another way of us to express ourselves and to use these sounds and these synthesizers, and to create this sound that was really new, but it was just another way, to express your feelings, and to express yourself, to get heard. George Clinton made an interesting point during the beginning of the documentary, when he was talking about, like, the sound that he was putting out there. There was nobody else doing it, right, during that time. He was really like the only person that was out there doing it. And the other thing that was really interesting, like, I can't remember the name, but the reggae artist that was also very well known at that time, well, very well known in Jamaica at that time. George Clinton didn't know who he was, so there was also that whole
Uh,
piece of it where they're each kind of operating in the same space, in the same time frame, but they're actually not cognizant of one another, right? So there's that whole other piece. Like, yes, there are people of color, displaying their art in sci-fi and in techno and in funk and all these other genres, and we're not connecting the dots, right? Maybe that movement be even larger if those dots are connected. If all of those individuals that were making this music were actually able to come together, and really collaborate on projects, um, rather than just kind of being isolated movements going on. It definitely takes a large revolution, of course, or a
Hey,
bunch
there's a lot of noise going on behind you, Malik. I don't know
of.
where it's coming from, but it's like
Yeah,
some.
it's not. I don't think it's my background, but um,
It's. I think it was like pretty loud.
yeah, it was like pots or something. Like, I don't know, pots and pans or something. It's fine.
Can
Um,
you like go back, like rewind a little bit?
um, no, because when I start ranting, I just go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. Please continue.
Um, but yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's just like, I think that there's an opportunity, watching the documentary and just seeing how many people are so passionate about the genre. And even though this was made, clearly like 20 years ago, and I can't believe 95 was 20 fucking years ago now. That's crazy, right? But this was made 20 years ago when this documentary was made, but there were so many people that were passionate about this art form. And just to know that it's out there, and if we just had more people of color kind of coming together, and collaborating and doing this, like this art form that's out there, it could be something that's in the forefront. It could be something that's really great, and it's definitely an original piece of work, that I think just needs its own voice.
Yeah, when I was because that's kind of what struck me too about the documentary, Malik, is like they were talking about like, this techno diaspora, like just trying to kind of reclaim some sort of African identity that had been taken away from folks when they were enslaved, and it really made me think a lot about like Janelle Monáe, who definitely has like a lot of songs that are like her whole like oeuvre is kind of like robots and the apocalypse. And I'm not gonna lie to you, like just knowing just the whole concepts that she's had for all her like all of her albums, she finally did a video for the song Primetime. and like it was just like it had like the whole kind of concept that she had come up with in her head in the albums, and it was like the robots, and you got like the cityscape, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I cried. I cried not because the video was sad, but because it was like finally like one of us who had all these ideas in their head like is able to get the recognition that she needs, and therefore unfortunately the money that she needed to actually bring that conception to life. So yeah, like I really like it sounds like I'm crying right now thinking about it because it happens so rarely to us that it was like very moving to me that she was able to express that. So there's her, and there's this performer called Ebony Bones, who's black. She's from Britain, and she also does this very apocalyptic, like I'm not gonna say electropop, but kind of similar music. And then FKA Twigs, who people now know because she's dating Edward from Twilight, but she also has like this very cosmic sensibility to her music. So those were three people who immediately came to mind when this guy was talking about this cosmic music, this technological diaspora. It's like these women of color who are using science fiction in one way or another. Like I don't even think FKA Twigs would refer to her music as science fiction, but when you hear it, it has that sense, and are able to use it to kind of tell their stories. Lorenzo, what are your thoughts?
You know, I took I guess it was like a black lit class or something. But one of the cool things about it was that for our homework, a lot of times it was an online class like at my school. You know, it was one of those classes you could take through like on the internet, and he used to assign us stuff to go look at the school's library, and it was like tapes and videos and film and stuff. And so yeah, I remember that was the first time I saw Sun Ra, um, and they allude to him in the film too. That was the third guy they talked about. So they talked about uh, uh, Clinton, and or they talked about P-Funk, and then they talked about the reggae thing. But then there was also this other guy that was like crazy jazz fusion. Have you guys ever heard Sun Ra before?
No.
It's
No.
he's pretty out there, and
I've heard some wrong.
he professed like coming here in a spaceship, and like you know he was here like he totally did the whole you know alien coming to Earth type thing, and he took it like really far. And it's crazy that he you know that they hadn't heard of each other. I thought that was I thought that was surprising for some reason. I don't know why. It's just you would think that I guess it was like what Malik was saying. You would think you would think they would run into each other, but this is before the internet. You know, they couldn't just like.
Like
This is before MP3s.
I think Sun Ra was the predecessor to George Clinton, right? I mean, I think that's the way it was
It
framed.
must have been, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
he was
the predecessor.
Sun Ra was
Like the
George
mentor.
Clinton's mentor. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. So they did know each other. It was just the reggae guy.
Yeah. Larry, I forget his last name.
Um, yeah, that. So another thing that I saw there was, oh man, I forget his name. He's got like a French name, but he was like one of the first, you know, filmmakers in the U.S. to do a lot of guerrilla style shooting. He was take and then next. He made a lot of movies, and so I got to see a few of those in that class too. But you know, those things are the whole sci-fi tilt to music and that idea of the synthesizers. I thought I agree that I thought that was very I never considered it like that quite before, but it's true. You're taking music and you're creating something that's like in the future, with it. Like he talked about the break beats and just like grabbing that one little piece of it and using it to yeah, you're like I don't know what you would call it, evolving it or deconstructing it, but whatever way you're doing it, you're processing it into like this future type world because it's taking that one thing and then just creating something entirely new using electronics. And what's that one organ called? The Moog, the Moog. Moog.
Now I'm gonna say Mobius.
He passed away, I think, not too long
Oh,
ago.
the Moog.
Yeah, is it Moog?
I think it's Moog.
Is it Moog? Anyway, yeah, that just totally sounds like the future and stuff and science fiction and horror movies too. It's funny, like when I think of the other thing that kind of goes with it, it's definitely horror movies. And horror and sci-fi do go very well together. So maybe that's why.
I'm sorry, Johanna. Before we move on, I just wanted to just give some recognition to the reggae artist. I know we kept saying reggae artist. His name is Lee. His name is Lee Perry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of let it before we started going further into it. I want to just kind of give him a little bit of recognition at least. we know who he is. We know who he is.
Thank you.
Now he belongs to the ages. All right, Anthony, are you ready to share about the documentary?
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much kind of hit on all the points that I thought throughout I thought it was really, really interesting documentary. And I think one of the things that I think I started to think about a lot when they were mentioning was the influences of so many different black music and the origins of that and how it's like kind of dispersed into different genres. Like they were talking about techno and they were talking about reggae, and he mentioned, I forget who it was that mentioned the how so much of the beginning of R&B and hip hop and all that stuff is all originated with just the single beat, the African drum, and that just kind of catapulted into all these different genres, and that can be found in everything. Even the origins of techno before that, when they were sampling music, I think in the documentary they mentioned that too. But sampling music with Grandmaster Flash and Run DMC and all the origins of that kind of stuff, that all started with that. And we see so much of sampling happening now in every kind of music, and it's so interesting that at the Afrofuturism and that concept of trying to bring that back and trying to reclaim a lot of that stuff and finding an identity for not just black music but then the black identity and the black culture. It's very, very fascinating. So it was a little bit out there for sure. I thought the production was interesting. It felt very much like a 90s
definitely
documentary.
Yeah, definitely.
And it really did, but it brought up very interesting points for sure.
Oh, awesome. Oh, Joe, you wanna?
Yeah. Before we end the documentary portion, I just wanted to ask, like, so when it ended, right? And they said the data thief was stuck in Africa. He couldn't go back. He was stuck in our time, and he couldn't go back. How did you guys interpret that? Was it that the way I saw it was like, okay, he's at the mothership now, the birthplace of it all in Africa, or like how did you guys take it?
I like your idea. It's a good way to take it.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it. I didn't, I was trying to figure. I was like, okay, so he couldn't go back. He's here, and it seemed like everything originated from there. Like everything that they came up with always went back to Africa, right? So, I mean, that's the way I interpreted it. I didn't know.
It reminded me a little bit of the Last Question by Isaac Asimov. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it's just the continually asking the question about like why are we here, and then the origin always comes back to like the Big Bang and just starting all over again. I thought that that's exactly what I thought of when they said that he was stuck back in Africa. It was just a loop. Like he'd go back to Africa and then bring those ideas and then start it all over again. That's kind of what I thought about it.
All right, so you're saying that he was the originator.
Right, exactly. Like he was
Okay.
the actual person who
Right.
started it,
Okay.
and it just loops back.
That's good too. I like that.
It loops to infinity. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome sauce. So are we ready to talk about the story? The story was Bloodchild by Octavia Butler, who was also featured in the documentary Last Angel of History. She is, I think frankly, she still is one of the very, very few black female sci-fi writers, and she's definitely the most recognized. She's most recognized for the book Kindred, which is about a black woman who is transported back to like the 1840s and is basically like on a plantation, that is owned by this guy who like she finds out is like her great great grandfather. But this story was not as connected to Earth. So, Lawrence, what were your thoughts?
I need to pass, but you come right back to me.
Okay, as long as we don't all pass, although I do have one final question at the end of this. So, Anthony?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, it disturbed me to the core, but I think that was kind of the point. I know in the afterword, Octavia Butler talked about how like she wanted to write about feeling weird about the bot fly because she was visiting Central or South America, I think, and so it definitely had that kind of descriptions and it painted a picture that was very disturbing and very weird. But I think it was a great read. I actually really really enjoyed it. But as far as thoughts, I don't know. If you want to get into the concept of symbiotic relationships and
Well,
I can see where you
guys tell me a little bit about it.
Oh, I see how it is. The truth comes out.
What I meant to say is, can we tell the audience a little bit about what it is?
Yeah.
Lorenzo, why don't you tell the audience?
Well, I would much rather hear it from you or your brother. Your brother is actually a performer, so I think it makes sense for him to do the whole, summary.
I knew it. This is exactly what I told Joe earlier.
Oh man, that's a lot.
Well, he's 500, right? He's 1 for 2. He got the video down, the documentary.
Okay, no, that's inexcusable. What are you talking about?
Basically, Lorenzo, let me just tell you what it's about. It's about men being pregnant.
pregnant men. I think that's
Pregnant
it.
men.
That's pregnant men.
Pregnant with alien worm babies.
Yes. So
Go on.
you could think of Arnold and Jr., but except with worms instead of a baby.
And it's sort of have like Alien because it's like a parasitic
Right.
like thing that lives inside the guy's body and then eats its way out and essentially kills the host. But like in this story, they have this weird symbiotic relationship with this alien race that the babies are taken out before the man is killed, but is really horrific and
Yeah, they basically have to cut them open and remove the worms, and they put it into an animal. At least they did in the story for the one incident where it happened. They they killed an animal and put the worms in the animal so the worms could grow and eat its way out of that instead of the human host, because they want to save the human host because they're going to do it again. So
Yeah.
How do they cut it out?
They cut open an animal.
No, the person.
No, they cut open the person and remove the
but
worms.
they cut open the animal and then they cut open the person so they can put the worms in the animal so that they don't die during the transfer.
Right.
Well, they used to, what was it? They used to put it in an animal, but then the animal evolved and like
Would eat
was
the
able to
eat the worms.
Right.
How do
Yeah,
they get it out of the person?
they
What?
cut them open. Yeah,
What do you
with an
mean?
animal because like the creature or like the alien has like an anesthetic thing.
As a stinger, yeah.
The stinger, yeah. So like it's I mean it's painful, but the person can still live if they do it carefully.
And they feed the host eggs, which
Right.
which which uh, which keep them
People are
young.
drugged up.
Yeah, it drugs them, and it slows down the aging process, so that you live longer.
Eggs, like chicken eggs, or eggs of something?
Yeah, the way they describe this sounds like a chicken egg, pretty much. But within the egg is like a drug that slows the aging process and pretty much just gets you high.
Yeah, I think
So
my
they're
I
just
think my
high
first,
and having
yeah,
babies all the time.
pretty
Yeah,
much.
but they only choose men because they want the women to keep reproducing other humans.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think my very first question while I was reading this was, what is Octavia Butler's problem with men? Like seriously, she must have a problem with men. She does not like men for whatever reason
no,
because
in the afterward, she just mentioned like, just she had the idea. Well, what if it what would it be like if men could get pregnant? That's what she wrote. You know
Yeah,
what I
right.
mean?
That's what she
I
wrote.
mean,
To make it sound really
I
nice.
mean,
But
she did
that
have
is
a manly kind of voice, I do have to say.
oh, come on. I mean, although she also said that the story's not about slavery, which I find really hard to believe.
Yeah, she did say that.
well,
That was really hard to believe. I mean, it was. I think the central idea was that the humans were slaves. Kind
But
of weird.
hold
Well,
on, but
I think they were used more as hosts than slaves because they didn't have them doing anything
yeah, I
except.
think
Right, but they were put on like a reservation. Like,
Yes.
were, like,
Basically, yeah.
hold on. Can you guys hear me?
yeah, we can hear you, Lorenzo.
Okay, so but why are you all discounting what she said? Maybe the whole story really is just like the way that she created a situation where men could have babies.
Yeah, like I said, when you read the
Like,
context and you read
if you were to read the book,
I'm just saying.
Well,
What's wrong with
basically,
what she said?
Lorenzo,
Like, why are you so quick to?
no, I'm not saying. Look, I'm not.
the humans are on an alien planet.
But I was just kind of making a point about it because it just seemed really, it seemed a bit much to me. And so I said that there's got, what's her inspiration?
Have you ever had a baby?
No, I haven't. But that's but
Too much. You can't say that when
besides that fact,
you went through it too much.
besides that fact, what I meant to say to you guys' point about the slavery piece, the one thing about it, one reason why I didn't see it as a slavery, um, was because from the human's perspective, it was accepted. It was an accepted form of the way things kind of are. The humans came to the alien planet, right, and they were looking for, I guess I'm not sure if they're looking for salvation or what they were actually looking for when they come to this planet. But this is kind of the relationship. Like it's like if you want to, and I said this before we started recording. Like if you want to live in my house, you're gonna live by my rules. So we got to do things. We got to do things in a way that both sides work, right? And I think slavery in the most basic sense is you don't have a choice in the manner as to which I use you, whether you like it or not, whether it's beneficial for you or not. And there's parts of the relationship between I'm gonna get this name wrong again, but Gatoy and Gon and the human and basically the human hosts. There's a part of that relationship that seems very beneficial for all parties, right? Um, and both sides get something out of it that they're both looking for. And I think that's the big difference between that and slavery to me, is because slavery is all one sided. It's all a dominant race or a dominant group, completely, taking advantage of a submissive party.
Well, maybe in this story, the aliens like are the women, or the women are the aliens.
but they're also human women, and they give birth to like the human babies.
I know, but in this story, I'm saying like.
But in this story too.
Well, what I mean is, like, yeah, there's human women, but there's also like these aliens that are portraying, or yeah, she's using those to be like the catalyst or to be the foil or whatever. So like think about it. The aliens are just trying to have babies, right?
Yeah, they're just trying to find a host that can
Right.
carry their baby.
And that's what women could maybe sometimes, or no, that's what men's maybe looking for in women, or women looking for in men, and the other person, gets involved in that relationship because they like the pleasure that it gives them, and then they end up, pregnant, and they have to deliver a baby, and so.
I'll tell you this much, Lorenzo. It was very, very sexual. The way.
Yeah, there
the
was
way,
a certain
the
aspect
way,
of it.
So
the
maybe
way, the way
they
the
have
alien
better.
placed her stinger, or his or her stinger, in the boy.
It was
Okay,
Yeah.
very much like, I love you, right?
okay, so that's what I'm trying to say is that in this, it sounds like in this story, the women are being played by men, and the men are being played by aliens.
Yeah, but the aliens made a choice to only use the men because they didn't want to stop the women from
You're
human
missing the whole
reproduction.
thing
Yeah.
about men. I'm not
No, I
talking about.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
The men are like the women, and the aliens are like the men. I totally get it. I'm just saying the aliens themselves made a conscious decision to use the men. But anyway,
I
yeah.
mean, the
But
thing is,
don't they always like? Don't the women use the conscious decision? Use the men? Don't the men use like? Isn't a symbiotic relationship?
It's a symbiotic relationship.
the way she phrases it, though, like in the afterword, is like, I'm trying to write like a love story between two very different folks, and I'm just like, what is the love story in this? She's sticking something in him that's gonna make babies, like grub babies, and then he's gonna die. Like, I don't
It
Well, no, he
understand.
didn't. No, he
it
wasn't gonna
describes the
die.
mother's plight. That's what it's like. Go see that movie,
Too.
Boyhood. That's what happens to the mom in that story. She has her baby. She has her two babies. They leave the house, and then the last you see of her, she's just withered. That's that's parenthood, and that's what it is to be a mom. So I
Yeah.
totally could. I'm
That's
still
what
on
it
the
is to
tip
be a
that
mom.
he just wanted. Yeah, I really think she just wanted to like to like explore what it would be like if men were the ones that had to have the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Johanna, it wasn't like the alien mom was having to make Sophie's choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
say Joe Sophie's trying.
wasn't like they
You
were
didn't see
given like
Sophie's Choice?
six or seven worms in each person.
I mean,
Um,
his mom was like, hell no, like I don't want to do this.
yeah, but did you see like the part or the part where the boy had the gun? She's like, "Are you gonna shoot me?"
Yes,
He's like, "No, I'm gonna shoot myself, so I don't have to do that."
it was
uh,
just disturbing, and in terms of the fact that she's like, this is just a relationship between like two people, I'm just like,
Are you guys talking about
and the
Sons of
human.
Anarchy?
we're
No.
talking about the story you didn't read.
Oh.
That's what we're talking about.
And the humans are just trying to buy time till the reinforcements arrive. They're trying to stay alive because I mean it's going to take them decades to get there, right? They're
Right.
trying to stay alive so that the reinforcements can come,
Staying alive.
so they can bring the Marines from Aliens, the second one. Get them over there.
I think there's a lot of merit in what Malik was saying about, like, as I understand, like, that she says it's not about slavery, and I do agree that, like, it can definitely be interpreted that way, just because it's like the humans are just trying to survive, and they realize that this is the only way that they can continue themselves, or at least their species on this planet, and continue to do it. So there is a give and take here, and even the grub or the centipede or the main
The human centipede.
the main alien, like she showed a lot of sympathy towards the humans to a certain degree, for sure. And I don't know. I think it may not be, maybe slavery is not the right word. Maybe it's not about slavery, but it's definitely about.
I think it's kind of like indentured servitude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
because
kind of like in
there's a give and take for sure, but there's definitely a party here that is getting more out of this than the other.
Definitely, yeah. The alien's definitely getting more out.
Awesome sauce. So we're gonna go to our last question, and our last question is: I made you read again. It was a little box in this article about something that social justice activists are referring to as visionary fiction, which is kind of taking this another level in terms of people of color in like writing and movies and everything else, artists that that I think they say something about how like there is an obligation, or there is like kind of this idea that science fiction should be envisioning new worlds, new better worlds, and new ways of how to restructure our current society, since it's been very problematic, as we've seen with Eric Garner, the Eric Garner decision, etc. So that leads me to my last question, which is, do artists of color, whether it's podcasters like us or writers or actors or anything else, have an obligation to use science fiction as a way to affect social change and as an instrument of social justice, considering that there are so few people of color who are involved in the science fiction genre? I'm going to go to Joe.
Oh, that's tough. I think it's an obligation to use the media, if you can, to to invoke social justice. I don't know if it has to be through science fiction. You know what I mean? Do it the best way you can, through any medium, if you have that ability to make that change. I think putting it through science fiction, I think, is secondary. I mean, it would be great if they did. But I think that in a situation like that, it becomes the genre in which you do it in, I think, almost becomes secondary to the actual message, right? But of course, I would like to see it in science fiction because I'm a big science fiction watcher. I love science fiction, and I would like to see it since I mostly watch science fiction in action. So I would like to see it there, but I would appreciate it in any genre.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I would love to see it in every genre. I think specifically, at least what I got from the quote was very much like science fiction is almost the only genre where we are able to create these different worlds, and that to some extent, using that aspect of the genre, we should be trying to work through, like, how about a world without jails? About a world, without police? And I can talk a little bit about why I find that problematic later, because I do find it a bit problematic. But I will move on to...
Problematic about what? You can't just say something problematic and not say why now.
I just find it problematic because I guess that seems to imply like a reconstructive approach, which is very much like, I'm going to create this ideal world and I'm going to stick people in it and see how it works, whereas like someone like me tends to kind of just blast the world apart and extrapolate how shitty it can get. Now, and I feel like both have value in terms of affecting social change, but for me, as a writer, I don't think I am going to be like, the one who affects the social change. I feel like I'm going to influence somebody, perhaps, to affect a social change, and it's not necessarily through the world building, but it might be through the characterization. So I guess I just find it problematic to define affecting social change in science fiction as I'm going to create a world where like there's no jails and see where it goes. Whereas I think the other side of it, which is I'm going to imagine a world where like, the ocean has risen 10 feet and let's see what happens and how do people survive in it. And I feel that writing about the way people survive in those worlds, even if I'm not imagining some like world where some negative factor in our current society is removed, is still important because I'm still writing about people who
So basically, you want to see people in adverse situations and how they come together and unite, as opposed to you really can't do that in a perfect situation because it's already perfect, right? You can't see how people are going to work together and form community.
Yeah, I feel like, but I feel like both are valuable, and even if they don't come together, it's about what do people do in these situations. You know, what do they do to survive? What do they do to thrive? Or are they just going to just wither away because they really can't function in that society? So I think that that's another way to talk about social change involving people of color. I don't see why it has to be this. I hate that term, visionary fiction, because that seems to imply that the only function of science fiction is to create these visions and extrapolate from there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off, and I meant to like let other people speak.
Well,
No, I agree with you.
when you say vision, though, I mean, you're saying that vision implies like a positive tone,
That if
like
that is kind of what
visionary.
they imply.
Well,
That's
I don't
what's
think that that's necessarily true. I think it's more the point that I took from it was that, people of color are, I guess, really everybody has this obligation to like somehow, change the world so that what exactly? So that everybody like for world peace or something.
that was
Uh,
really my impression. Yeah.
so Uh, I don't know. I think the bigger point though is that I feel that that's not true. I think either way, like I think that people need to, if something's going to be good, it's going to be because it's coming from like, an honest place. So you need to tell the stories that you believe in for whatever reasons you have. Those are your own reasons as the creator of whatever you're doing. And so that needs to be true. You shouldn't, if you're coming to it with some sort of agenda, it's gonna be shit. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, and you know what? Like, that's another thing that bothers me about it, is when you start attaching agendas to, because I'm reading this speculative fiction short story collection, and you can tell when they're adding an agenda like that, and it's so fucking inauthentic. But, yes, Anthony.
I think obligation is a dangerous term when it comes to art. And that goes for writing or painting or acting or whatever. I think obligation can be kind of dangerous because you get into an issue of discriminating against people that may not, even people of color that may not necessarily want to push a certain agenda, or want to be looked as some kind of warrior for their own race in that sense. Like, I think for me, and I think it has to be a personal thing. I think for me as an actor, what my obligation is for myself is to not only do something that is quality, but I think about like my son who's multiracial, and I want him to grow up in a world where he has plenty of people that he can look in movies or theater or as writers of people that he can look at and say I can relate to that person, or I can relate to the story that they're telling. And I think that has to be personal, and I don't think that has to be an obligation. I think that has to be something coming from the heart and something coming from a passion that you have to or whatever story it is that you're trying to tell.
You know what I will say though is I do feel some obligation to having in whatever stories, whether it's like a movie or something that I've written. I think that like I always feel obligated to make my main character, usually the main character, but I try to make it like a Latino. You know what I mean? Like I feel that obligation. So after I just said what I said, I think back on like my own experience, and it's true. I do feel an obligation. Um, yeah, and I don't know how bad that. To me, that doesn't seem like a bad obligation. It seems like a good one. So I don't know. I guess you have to pick your obligations.
Yeah, I do have to say, and I think I've talked about it on the show, that I made a decision about 6 months ago that as many people as possible in the draft that I've written should be people of color. Just because I feel that I have this avenue and I have these characters and they feel more authentic to me as people of color, so why not? But you're right, Lorenzo, that in and of itself is somewhat of an obligation, right? It's not something we consider an obligation because it doesn't feel inauthentic to us, but we are recognizing.
I might, like, it might, I don't know about authentic. Like, it doesn't, it's not, you know, I think what I was saying earlier was that everything needs to be done authentically, like 100%, which is just probably not, it's not, doesn't really happen that way, probably most of the time. But yeah, I think you also have to deal with your own, like, your own feelings, because maybe I wouldn't have normally casted that person. Maybe I would have, the name David is like a good name, and it can go either way. But I don't know. There's just like something that we're conditioned. I think that there's like certain names that if you don't, um, they can be too. What's the word? Some high school counselor used it once. Um, Ethnic, to describe, like, when you name your children, you should name them, names that are not too ethnic, like Bill and Jim and Howard.
Howard.
And so there is like a tendency to go to those names, like, I don't know, I feel it sometimes, and so I have to resist that, and I'm conscious that I'm doing it, and so I don't know where the
Authenticity.
Jesus Christ. Authentic. Oh my God.
Authenticity.
Sometimes I feel like George Bush. I feel exactly how George Bush would feel. The Mexican president makes the same kinds of mistakes. Like, one time he couldn't think of a book besides the Bible. That was the only book he could think of in his head. I think stuff like that happens to me sometimes. I mean, I can think of more than one book in my head right now, but sometimes your tongue gets tied up. Authenticity. Yeah, I don't know where it fits all the time. There's because you're also, as a writer, you're working through your own, like, issues and shit too.
Malik, I think that I did not. I think that you're up.
Yeah, I mean, well, and a lot of you guys touched on it, and I think I touched on it a little bit earlier when I was talking. We were talking about the invisibility of people of color in science fiction. I think that the obligation at the end of it all, for anyone who is making art of any form, be it a podcast, a movie, writing a book, or a play, is to use the stage that you are given to tell the most genuine story that you can, and to tell your story, and to make it yours. So if that means that you're creating a world, you're creating a sci-fi world, like you said, where there's no prisons. If this is your story, then make it yours, and make it your story, make it your tale, and use that stage to tell it in the most genuine way possible. And so, to Lorenzo's point about making the characters that he writes Latino, well, you've lived your life as a Latino male. It might be difficult for you to write a story where the lead character is a kid from the suburbs, is a white kid from the suburbs. I mean, you may very well be able to do that, but it's more of a challenge for you. So if you feel more comfortable writing that story or telling that story by utilizing a Latino male as your main character, and that feels comfortable to you, then make that story. I don't
See,
feel
that's
like,
the thing, Malik, is that it doesn't always feel comfortable for me because, in fact, I grew up around, like, a lot of white suburban kids.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. What I mean is,
No, but my point
what I was
is that,
saying
like,
is,
I always felt like kind of like.
right. What I'm saying is your obligation should not be to make the story about a Latino male. Your obligation should be to make the story that you feel most comfortable portraying, that you most feel comfortable displaying out there. So if you feel really comfortable writing about a white kid from the suburbs, then go ahead and write about that.
But I don't feel comfortable about it, and I think that's what writing is a lot of times about. It's like exploring the things that you're not comfortable with.
But that's what I'm saying. If you do, then you go ahead and write about it. If you don't, and you feel that you have to write about a Latino male, then you write about that Latino male. But whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you put out there, make that the most genuine article. And that's what I'm saying. That's my only point in regards to that. As far as, like, science fiction is concerned, I think that they mentioned it during the a documentary a couple of times.
On visibility, invisibility.
Uh, what's that?
Wait, I thought you guys were like fix this in post, but I thought there seemed to be a silence.
Oh no, I was still talking. Um,
Oh, I'm sorry,
can
Malik.
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Oh, okay.
now.
No, what I was saying is that in the documentary that we were watching, it was mentioned a couple of times that sci-fi, it doesn't reflect our past; it imagines our future. That was actually mentioned, and it was also mentioned that sci-fi allows us to tell stories about a world that we wish, the way that we wish it could be, not the world that not that it is. So I think sci-fi is a space where, like I said earlier, allows you to kind of create the world and then create your story within that world. And so I don't feel like there's an obligation to um, for Latino or Black or Asian creators to go ahead into that space and make that world. It may just very well be a little easier for them to be accepted because people may be more willing to accept your story if it's if you're saying that I'm creating this world. I'm not I'm not stepping into you can't be everybody can't be Quentin Tarantino and step into a historical context and create his own story within the backdrop of slavery or within the backdrop of the Holocaust, right? Not everybody's going to have that opportunity and the space in order to make that story. So if sci-fi is the only way that we're going to be that people are going to be able to tell their stories, and that's the genre that we're going to use, then you know what? As long as we can get our feet, if we can get our feet in the door and make good art, I'm all for it. And then maybe hopefully that will allow us to start making art in genres of music and movies and television shows that are different, that are in different genres, and we're able to tell those stories too. And so I hope that that's sufficient in thinking about the obligation of artists and creators.
I think that that is such a beautiful way to finish the discussion in terms of using science fiction as a way to, as maybe that final way, like that way to break through using many different media within it. So I really want to end with that. Um, I will cede the floor to see if anybody else has any last thoughts. Um,
Well, I have like a last thought.
We know
My
you do, Lorenzo.
yeah, of course.
so my other issue with the word POC, well, no, people of color. So even just the whole phrase people of color is that not all the people of color have much color, and I think that I've always felt like sort of the other in like just about any situation that I've ever been in, and because I don't like, my own family, they live on the west side of San Antonio, and I hang out with them, but I'm not like, culturally, I don't quite, assimilate or whatever. And then it's on the other end, like when I would go back to Maryland and be around my black and my white friends, then I wouldn't quite fit in there either, And so I always felt like another, and I think that that's really what people of color is talking about, are like, people who feel like they're the other, and I don't think it's always as simple as black and white. Pardon the.
No, but I think that's really a nice thing about science fiction, isn't it? That for those of us who feel like the other, because I've had similar experiences, it's a way for us to talk about the other and explore it and think about it. And I think that that's only a microcosm of this whole idea of people of color using science fiction to talk about their experiences. So, all right. So I think we're going to close for real now. Now that Lorenzo has decided he had to have the last word.
He had the last word.
I'll put it somewhere. I'll interject it somewhere along the way.
Yeah, just fix it in post, move it around. So yeah, I think we've had a really good discussion tonight. Thank you guys for coming on. Thank you, Anthony, for coming on. If you want to take a chance to just do like a last plug for the Far Field.
Yep. Watch out for the Farfield movie coming very, very soon. Definitely within the next couple of months. And I'll definitely send you some photos and stuff that maybe you can put on your website. That'd be great.
Do you guys have music yet?
Yeah, we have very, very minimal music in the movie for sure.
If you guys have like a like a wave or an MP3 that you could send, we could use
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah, I'll get in contact with the editor and see if we can get some of that.
Yeah, cool. And if they have any like small clips, I mean, I don't know how it works, but we could always interject those into the podcast when it airs. If it, I mean, I guess I'm the one editing it, I assume. So it would probably get done like come out on Monday or something. Is everybody celebrating Martin Luther King Day?
I'm celebrating by having the day off and thanking Martin Luther King for it.
The day off.
I am actually very, very. I'm really, really considering. Hopefully it would be possible to. I'm going to definitely take my daughter, but I would love to take my 3-year-old son to see Selma. I don't know how it's gonna. I don't know how it's gonna work because he doesn't sit through much at all. But I'm definitely gonna take my daughter to see it over the weekend.
That's a good one. I was concerned about taking Aviva, but if you're doing it, Malik, if you're taking Caleb, I may think about taking Aviva.
I really want to see it, and even if it's something that he won't remember, I'll be able to say he was in the room, and maybe he'll be able to take something out of it, however small. But my daughter's definitely gonna see it. I don't care what she says.
That's funny. Well, all right, you guys, Far Field. Thank you, Anthony, for coming on. We had a great discussion. Stay tuned for the weekly next week at TBD. And I think the next week is Malik's show.
Yes, it is.
All right. Do you have any? It's TBD?
Yeah, it's TBD. No ideas yet. I think I'm going to get really ratchet with it, though.
Yes! It begins. It begins. Yes, ratchet.
I think we got to mix in the deep with the ratchet. I think you got to do that.
I think so.
Malik, I think you should do the racism show.
If I could make it ratchet.
Definitely.
I am here for the ratchet so hard. You have no idea.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, it's still in everything's still on the table right now.
Still in pre-production.
Yeah, I haven't made it. I'll have a final decision by the end of the weekend.
Sweet. Well, either way, we have the weekly and Malik show to look forward to. So I think we are going to sign off from the Agents of Helm, Malik, Lorenzo, Joe, myself, guest Anthony. See you soon.
Ahoy, ahoy.
See you.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Later.
Peace
Hey.
Oh, God. Ahoy, hoy. Is it ahoy, hoy?
You started with ahoy, hoy.
Ahoy, hoy.
Here, that's
more of a dream.